Dinner rush at Barrett's Grill had just hit its peak when the front door burst open with the sound of boots and shouting. 5 men stormed in loud, half-drunk, and reckless. They weren't here for food. Their eyes locked on a corner booth where a sharply dressed Korean man sat calmly, sipping tea. That was Jin Park, a businessman known in certain circles for reasons no one dared say aloud. The waitstaff froze. Silverware clattered. A child started crying in the back booth until his mother shushed him. But at the counter stood Tanya Jackson, a tall black waitress in her 30s wearing her apron like armor. She'd seen fights before, she'd just never seen one begin with this kind of intent. "Park," one of the men barked, pointing. "You thought you could hide out in a place like this?" His name was Eddie Sloan, a local hustler who fancied himself more dangerous than he was. Behind him stood his crew: Randy Pike, Logan Reeves, Todd Mercer, and Sean Kilpatrick, each carrying that twitchy confidence of men looking for trouble. Jin Park didn't rise. He simply placed his cup down and said in a tone so calm it chilled the air, "You're interrupting dinner." The men laughed. Eddie took a step forward, sweeping napkins from another table. "You owe us, Park. You and your fancy suits and your clean image. We didn't forget who ran this city first." Tanya moved instinctively, stepping closer but not enough to draw attention. The other servers backed away toward the kitchen. She didn't. Something in her posture stayed deliberate, feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced. Linda Barrett, the owner, peeked from the kitchen doorway, phone trembling in her hand. "I'm calling the police," she whispered to herself. But Tanya didn't reach for her phone. She watched, eyes steady, calculating every exit, every distance. Eddie slammed his hand on Park's table. "You've been hiding behind money and fancy lawyers, but you forgot what loyalty means." Jin Park's eyes lifted. "You forgot what fear costs." That sentence shifted everything. Eddie's crew stiffened. Tanya could feel it the second before a fight breaks out. The way sound seems to stretch. And then it happened. Eddie lunged. Chairs scraped, a glass shattered, and Jin Park's bodyguard, Derek Cole, moved from behind the booth like lightning. He caught Eddie's arm mid-swing, twisted it, and drove him into the table. But the others swarmed. One smashed a bottle. Another pulled a chain. The room erupted in chaos. Linda screamed for everyone to get out. Guests scrambled for the door, but Tanya stayed. She saw Derek go down as Logan swung a chair across his back. Eddie's crew piled on Jin, fists flying. Tanya's hands trembled, but not from fear. From restraint. She took one step forward, apron still on, voice clear. "That's enough." No one listened. Randy turned toward her, sneering. "Stay out of this, lady." But Tanya didn't back up. Her eyes narrowed, and in one motion, she reached for the nearest thing, a metal tray, and flung it across the room. It struck Randy clean across the jaw. He dropped instantly. The others froze for half a beat, shocked that a waitress had just done that. Todd cursed. "You crazy, he didn't finish." Tanya stepped in low, faster than they expected, driving her knee into his gut and elbowing his throat before he could recover. Years of training flooded back like muscle memory, the kind she'd promised herself she'd never use again. Eddie blinked, backing up. "Who the hell is she?" Jin Park, still half-seated, looked at Tanya, really looked, and for the first time that night, his stoic mask shifted. Recognition flickered. Tanya wasn't just any waitress. As Logan swung a broken chair leg toward her, Tanya ducked, pivoted, and twisted his wrist until he screamed and dropped it. Then, with calm precision, she pushed him toward the counter and swept his legs from under him. He crashed to the floor. Linda, trembling near the kitchen door, whispered, "Tanya, please stop, they'll kill you." Tanya didn't answer. She glanced toward Derek, who was back on his feet, bleeding but standing. Their eyes met, a silent understanding between soldiers who had seen worse nights. Eddie was the last one still holding his ground. Breathing heavy, red-faced, he spat. "You think this is over? You don't know who I am." Tanya's tone was level. "Then you don't know who I was." For a moment, no one moved. Then police sirens wailed in the distance. The attackers hesitated, panic setting in. Eddie tried to grab Park again, but Derek stepped between them. Tanya flanked his side, moving like she'd trained for this because she had. Eddie turned and ran, shouting to his men, "Move!" The remaining attackers stumbled out through the shattered glass door, leaving a trail of chaos behind them. When silence finally settled, the restaurant was wrecked, tables overturned, dishes shattered, guests gone. Jin Park stood slowly, brushing off his jacket. His tea had spilled, but his calm hadn't. He looked at Tanya and said quietly, You're no ordinary waitress. Tanya exhaled for the first time, hands trembling again now that the danger had passed. Used to be Army medical, she muttered almost to herself. Used to patch up fights like this, not stop them. Jin's eyes narrowed with something that wasn't gratitude, it was curiosity. You fought like someone who's seen more than combat. Tanya didn't respond. She began picking up broken glass from the floor, grounding herself in the routine of cleanup. Derek wiped his lip, nodded respectfully at her. You just saved his life, he said. She shook her head. No, just kept a bad night from turning worse, but Jin wasn't done watching her. No one moves like that without a past, he said quietly. And I don't believe in coincidences. Tanya met his gaze. Then you're about to have a long night, Mr. Park. Outside, blue lights began to flash through the windows as sirens stopped. The fight was over for now. Inside, 3 people stood amid the wreckage. A silent waitress with shaking hands, a crime boss who owed her his life, and a bodyguard who could tell this was only the beginning. By the time the flashing lights painted the front windows red and blue, the chaos had quieted. Guests who hadn't fled were standing outside, murmuring to one another in disbelief. Inside Barrett's grill, the air smelled like broken glass, fear, and adrenaline. Captain Raymond Ellis was the first officer through the door. Broad-shouldered, calm, and dressed in the kind of authority that didn't need volume, he scanned the wrecked dining room. Who's in charge here? He asked. Linda Barrett pointed, her voice still trembling. She is. Well, she's the one who stopped it. Tanya stood near the counter, still catching her breath, holding a towel against a small cut on her arm. Her uniform was streaked with dust from the fight, but her composure hadn't cracked. The attackers ran east toward the alley, she said evenly. 5 of them. One's probably limping. Ellis raised an eyebrow. You saw all that and stayed put? Didn't have time to think about leaving, Tanya replied. Derek Cole, still standing by Jin Park's booth, nodded. She saved our lives. All of us. Park hadn't moved from his spot. His suit was torn at the sleeve, but he sat quietly, studying Tanya like a puzzle he intended to solve. Your waitress, he said, handled herself like someone who's done this before. Ellis turned to Tanya again. You military? She hesitated. Once Army medic, Afghanistan, nothing fancy. But Ellis caught the precision in her tone. You disarmed 3 men with serving equipment. That's more than nothing fancy. Tanya didn't flinch. Reflexes don't retire, Captain. He scribbled something in his notepad, then looked at Park. Mr. Park, you want to explain why 5 armed men just tried to take you apart in a family restaurant? Park's eyes flicked toward the shattered window. Old business. I was told it was settled, Ellis frowned. Old business doesn't usually show up with bottles and chains. You planning to file a report? Park gave a faint smile. No, I'll handle it privately. That answer didn't sit well with Ellis. But before he could press further, 2 patrol officers entered, cuffing a bleeding man between them. Randy Pike, the one Tanya had dropped with the tray. He was out cold by the dumpster, one officer said. Ellis turned back to Tanya. You did that? She nodded once. He swung first. Randy glared at her, jaw swollen. That woman's crazy. She came at us. Ellis ignored him. Read him his rights. Then to Tanya. You're coming with us to make a statement. Linda started to protest, but Tanya held up a hand. It's fine. I'll go. As she walked toward the door, Derek called after her. Ma'am, thank you. Tanya didn't answer, but her glance said more than words. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Phones were already out, recording. Someone whispered, That waitress took down a gang by herself. Tanya hated the attention. The last thing she wanted was headlines. She'd come to work that morning thinking about rent and tips, not about revisiting the part of herself she'd buried years ago. Inside the patrol car, the silence was thick. The young officer driving finally asked, You really used to be Army? Yeah, Tanya said softly. Long time ago. What's a soldier like you doing waiting tables? She looked out the window at the city rolling by. Trying to forget why I had to learn to fight. At the station, Ellis met her in the small interview room. He placed a recorder on the table but didn't turn it on. Off the record, he said. You didn't just serve overseas. You were part of the Rapid Field Response Unit, weren't you? Tanya's eyes narrowed. That's classified. I read your file, he said. You saved 6 soldiers under fire without backup, and then you disappeared from the system. People move on, Tanya said flatly. Ellis leaned back. Most don't move on into diners across from Korean syndicates. Her jaw tightened. I didn't know who he was. He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. But you should know word's already spreading. Those men you stopped? 2 of them have priors tied to loan sharking. One's connected to a Vegas operation. You just stepped into something bigger than a bar fight, Tanya sighed. Story of my life. Meanwhile, across town, Jin Park sat in the back of a black sedan, his phone pressed to his ear. Find out everything about her, he told his driver. Name, record, history. That woman is not random. Back at the precinct, Ellis ended the off-record talk and finally hit the recorder. For the record, name and occupation. Tanya Jackson. Waitress at Barrett's Grill, he nodded. And how long were you aware of the suspects before the assault? 2 seconds, she said. That's all I needed. Ellis gave the faintest smile. That's a soldier's answer. Tanya folded her hands on the table. You going to charge me with anything? He shook his head. You saved lives, but I'm worried the people you tangled with won't let it go. She looked him in the eye. Then they'll regret finding me again. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ellis turned off the recorder. Go home, Miss Jackson, but keep your phone close. Something tells me this isn't over. Outside, the night air was cold, crisp, alive with the hum of the city. Tanya walked back toward the diner, headlights streaking by. For the first time in years, her instincts were awake again. The part of her that could read danger like weather, it was back. And miles away, in a dimly lit office above a private club, Jin Park poured himself another cup of tea. A man in a suit entered quietly. Boss, you asked for background on the waitress. We found something. Park didn't look up. Go on. She's not just former Army. She was attached to a covert medical security detail. Her record's sealed, but someone higher up signed it. The kind of signature that doesn't appear unless the work was off the books. Park's hand paused mid-pour. Interesting, the aide hesitated. Should I reach out to her? Park's gaze darkened. No, she'll come back on her own. People like that don't walk away forever. Back at her small apartment, Tanya sat on the edge of her bed, phone buzzing nonstop with messages from coworkers and news alerts already spinning the story into legend. Hero. Waitress stops gang attack. Former. Army medic saves local businessman. She turned the screen face down. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone being pulled back into something she'd worked years to forget. And somewhere out there, 5 angry men were plotting revenge. 2 nights passed. The city had already moved on, or thought it had. Local news channels looped security footage from Barrett's Grill, showing a grainy glimpse of the fight. They called Tanya Jackson the fearless waitress. Reporters camped outside the restaurant, and social media turned her name into a trending tag. But Tanya wanted none of it. She hadn't gone back to work since that night. The memory of it kept replaying in her head, the speed, the noise, the moment she stopped thinking and let instinct take over. She thought leaving the Army would mean leaving that version of herself behind. She was wrong. At dawn, she laced up her sneakers and ran through the quiet streets, trying to outrun the echo of boots, shouts, and shattering glass. By the time the sun broke through the clouds, she'd already decided she'd quit the job, leave town, disappear again if she had to. But by afternoon, the past caught up. Captain Raymond Ellis called. We need to talk, he said, his tone tight. Tanya hesitated. You found them? Not all, Ellis replied. 3 are in custody. 2 vanished. But that's not the problem. Someone's been asking questions about you. Someone with deep pockets. Tanya's pulse slowed. Park? Ellis paused. You already know the name. I figured, she said. He's the reason this isn't over. Ellis exhaled over the line. You're not wrong. A black sedan's been parked across from your building since this morning. I'll send a patrol. No, Tanya said quickly. Don't. If they're watching me, I want to see who they send. Tanya, you're not on duty anymore, Ellis warned. I know, she said, but I still know how surveillance works. That night, as the city's hum turned to quiet, Tanya sat near her window, lights off, watching the reflection of the street below. The sedan was still there. Its windows were dark. She couldn't see inside, but she could feel it. Whoever was in there wasn't police. At 11:07 p.m., a figure stepped out, a tall man in a dark coat. He looked around once and began walking toward her building. Tanya's hand tightened around the handle of a steel flashlight. She waited until he reached her door before she opened it. Didn't think you'd answer, the man said with a faint Korean accent. It was Derek Cole, Jin Park's bodyguard. What do you want? Tanya asked, keeping her voice low. I came to say thank you, he replied. And to warn you. Warn me about what? Mr. Park doesn't like owing debts, especially not to people outside his circle. Some of his rivals think helping him means you've chosen sides. Tanya's eyes didn't move. Tell your boss I don't belong to anyone's side. Derek nodded slowly. I'll tell him. But he already knows. That's why he's worried. Before Tanya could answer, he handed her a small card. It was plain black, embossed with a single gold symbol, a circle divided by a diagonal slash. If you see that mark again, Derek said quietly, walk away. Don't ask questions. What does it mean? She asked. He didn't answer. He just said, you didn't save a businessman that night. You saved a man in the middle of a war you can't see. Then he left, his footsteps fading into the street. Tanya closed the door and looked at the card again. Something about the mark stirred a memory years ago in Kandahar, a covert unit operating under private contract. The same symbol had been on a crate she once treated wounded soldiers near. The cargo wasn't listed in any report. It wasn't supposed to exist. Now it was back on a card delivered to her door. Across town, Eddie Sloan was pacing inside an abandoned warehouse lit by a single hanging bulb. His face still bruised, his pride even more so. A waitress? He spat. A waitress humiliated me in front of my own crew. Logan Reeves, nursing a broken wrist, muttered. She wasn't just some waitress. She moved like she knew what she was doing. Eddie slammed his fist on the table. I don't care what she was. Park's got her protecting him now. That makes her fair game. From the shadows, a voice replied, calm and deliberate. Touch her and you'll regret it. Everyone froze. Jin Park stepped into the light, flanked by two new men in tailored suits. Eddie sneered. You followed me? Park didn't raise his voice. You brought this on yourself. You attack me in public, you drag outsiders into old business. That's not how we operate. You think you scare me? Eddie said, stepping closer. Park's expression didn't change. No, but she should, Eddie frowned. The waitress? Park nodded. You think she fought for me? She didn't. She fought because she saw injustice. And people like that, they don't stop halfway. You'll see. He turned to leave, but before he did, he looked back once more. If you want to survive, leave the city by tomorrow. Because the next person who comes for her won't be me, and they won't ask questions. Back in her apartment, Tanya couldn't sleep. The card still sat on her table. Her phone buzzed again, another message, this one from an unknown number. Unknown. You should have stayed retired, Sergeant Jackson. She froze. That rank, no one outside the army should have known it. Her fingers hovered over the reply, but she didn't type anything. She deleted the message, powered down the phone, and walked to the kitchen. The card was still there under the lamp, its gold mark catching the light. For the first time since the fight, Tanya felt something she hadn't in years, not fear, but readiness. She opened a drawer and pulled out an old metal case. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was her military field badge and a folded photograph of her old unit. 4 faces. Only one of them, hers, was still alive. The knock on the door came softly this time. She didn't reach for the flashlight. She already knew who it was. When she opened it, Captain Ellis stood there, hat in hand. You were right, he said quietly. They're not just some gang. There's chatter about a private network, mercs, not mobsters. And your name's been circulating again. Tanya crossed her arms. Then we're both running out of time. Ellis nodded grimly. Yeah, but the question is, are you ready to stop running? Tanya looked past him into the night. The city lights shimmered like signals in the dark. I never stopped, she said. I just went quiet. Ellis exhaled slowly. Then it's time to make some noise. And somewhere across town, Jin Park raised his glass in silent acknowledgement. He'd just ordered a protection detail, but not for himself. For the woman who'd just become his biggest unknown. Rain swept across the city the next morning, turning the sidewalks slick and silver. Tanya Jackson didn't sleep. She sat by her window, coffee untouched, eyes fixed on the empty street below. Captain Ellis's warning kept looping in her head. You're not done with this yet. By 9, she was back at Barrett's Grill. The front door still had a crack from where the fight shattered it. The restaurant was quieter now, the chaos replaced with an eerie stillness. Linda Barrett met her at the door, arms crossed, eyes weary. Tanya, you shouldn't be here, Linda said softly. They said it's not safe. The news is still calling. Reporters keep asking about you. I'm not here for interviews, Tanya replied. Just checking on everyone. Linda sighed. I hired extra security last night, but they left when they heard who the fight was about. They don't want to get caught between mob types. Tanya glanced at the floor where blood had stained the grout. You did the right thing. As she spoke, a black sedan pulled up across the street. Different car. Same chill down her spine. Inside sat a man she hadn't seen before. Mid-40s, neatly dressed, face too calm for someone on a surveillance job. He wasn't law enforcement, she could tell by the way he didn't look at anything, yet saw everything. Derek Cole appeared moments later, walking toward the sedan from the opposite corner. Tanya's instincts sharpened. The two men locked eyes, no words exchanged. One subtle nod. Then Derek walked inside. Told you to stay home, he said as he approached her. And I told you I don't take orders, Tanya replied. He smiled faintly. You sound like him. Park? Derek nodded. He's setting a trap tonight. Word is Eddie's crew is regrouping, only this time they've got help. Hired muscle. Park wants to draw them out. Where? Tanya asked. The pier. Old shipping yard on the south side. Tanya frowned. And you came here to what, invite me? Derek shrugged. More like warn you. He thinks they'll come after you first. Tanya shook her head. That's not a trap. That's bait. He looked at her, serious now. You saved him once. That makes you part of it whether you like it or not. She exhaled. Tell Park if he's using me to clean up his mess, he picked the wrong soldier. Derek leaned closer. He's not using you. He's protecting you from what's coming. The people behind Eddie aren't just street criminals. They're ex-military too, the kind that didn't come home right. Tanya froze. The memory of that message. You should have stayed retired, Sergeant Jackson flashed through her mind. Who are they? She asked quietly. Call themselves the Sentinel Crew, Derek said. Black Ops washouts. Smugglers, hitmen, whatever pays. One of them was in your division once, her breath caught. That's not possible. Derek held her gaze. Name's Cole Avery. Ring a bell? Tanya's chest tightened. It did. Avery had been her commanding officer during a mission gone wrong in Afghanistan. He'd disappeared after an investigation into stolen arms. They said he died in a blast. But if he was alive, what does he want? Derek's tone darkened. He wants you dead, Tanya. You exposed him once without even knowing it. The stolen weapons, those crates you treated soldiers beside, they were his shipments. He's been off the grid since. Until now. For a moment, Tanya's composure cracked. So this isn't about Park. No, Derek said. Park's the excuse. You're the target. The realization hit like cold water. Every choice she'd made in the last week, the fight, the police, the story going viral, had flushed her out into the open. She walked toward the counter, gripping the edge to steady herself. Then we end it. Derek tilted his head. You sound like Park again. Maybe he's got the right idea. Linda, overhearing fragments of the conversation, stepped forward nervously. And what? Tanya, please don't drag yourself into this. You already did more than anyone should have. Tanya turned to her, voice calm but firm. If I don't, they'll come here again. And next time they won't care who's standing in the way. She picked up her jacket, slipped it on, and headed for the door. Derek followed. You going to the pier? Not yet, she said. First I'm going to make sure they can't track me there. How? She gave him a faint, humorless smile. Old habits. An hour later, she was at a small internet cafe on the east side using a burner laptop. Years of working in logistics had taught her how to vanish digitally. She rerouted her phone through encrypted channels, wiped old logins, and pulled up traffic camera feeds. Her face stared back from half a dozen stills across the city, grainy, recognizable. She deleted what she could. By dusk, she was at the edge of the docks. Cargo cranes loomed against the gray sky. The wind carried the smell of oil and salt. Derek was already there with two of Park's men, silent, disciplined, armed. Tanya kept her eyes on the shadows between the shipping containers. How many? She asked. 4 cars spotted entering 5 minutes ago. Derek replied. At least 8 men. Eddie's crew and others. Let them come, she said quietly. They wanted a trap. Let's give them one. From somewhere deep within the yard came the echo of footsteps. Dozens. Derek's hand went to his weapon. They're early. Tanya straightened, shoulders squared, eyes narrowing. Good, I hate waiting. A voice boomed across the metal yard. Tanya Jackson. Long time, Sergeant. It was Avery. Alive. Confident. cruel. Her stomach tightened, but her stance didn't waver. "You should have stayed dead," she called back. He laughed. "You took something from me once. Tonight I take it back." The shadows began to move. The sound came first, the crunch of boots over gravel, the faint metallic click of weapons being cocked in unison. The dockyard's floodlights flickered to life, washing the rusted containers in harsh yellow light. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt wet and heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. Tanya Jackson stood in the open beside Derek Cole, her stance steady, eyes scanning the maze of steel crates ahead. Across the yard, Cole Avery emerged from the shadows, flanked by half a dozen men. He looked almost untouched by time's same confident stride, same cold grin. "Been a while, Sergeant," he called out, his voice carrying across the pier. "Didn't think I'd see you again outside a desert." Tanya didn't move. "You were supposed to be dead," he smirked. "You believe everything they tell you now?" Derek stepped slightly forward, gun drawn but low. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your face after that mess in Kandahar." Avery ignored him, eyes fixed on Tanya. "Still rescuing people who don't deserve it, huh? First that warlord's convoy, now a Korean mobster. You've got a type." Tanya's jaw tightened. "I rescue people. You profit off them," Avery chuckled. "Still moral." "That's why you'll lose," he raised a hand. Instantly, movement erupted around them. Gunmen climbed over crates, forming a semicircle. The floodlights shifted, trapping Tanya and Derek in a cone of light like a stage. Derek muttered, "He's boxed us in." "Not yet," Tanya replied, eyes darting upward. She spotted what she needed, a suspended shipping container above their position, its hook loose on the crane rail. "Keep their attention," she whispered. Derek nodded. "Got it." He raised his weapon and fired a warning shot. The bullet hit a metal pole, sparking a clang that echoed through the yard. The mercenaries ducked, firing back wildly. Tanya sprinted left, weaving between crates, her movements sharp and low to the ground. "Still fast," Avery said, tracking her with his gun but not firing yet. "That's what I always liked about you, Jackson. You move like you still think there's a plan." Tanya ignored him, grabbing a rusted lever near the crane's control post. She jammed it downward. The chain above them groaned, then snapped free. The shipping container dropped like thunder. It slammed onto the pier with an explosion of metal and dust, scattering Avery's men in every direction. Two were pinned instantly. Others dove for cover. Derek took the opening, rolling behind a forklift and firing clean, controlled bursts. Tanya darted forward again, unarmed but faster than any of them expected. She caught one of Avery's men off guard, striking his wrist until the pistol dropped, then elbowed him hard across the jaw. "Still think I don't have a plan?" she said. Avery's grin faded. He gestured, and another wave moved in 4 men from the flank advancing through the mist. Tanya ducked behind a steel drum as bullets rattled around her. The metallic ring was deafening, but her focus stayed razor-sharp. She motioned to Derek across the yard. He understood. 2 minutes, he mouthed. Then she saw a faint reflection on the upper catwalk. "A sniper, down!" she shouted. The shot came a split second later, shattering the drum behind her. She rolled to the left, grabbing the fallen pistol, and fired upward. The sniper toppled from the ledge. The yard fell quiet again for half a breath, then Avery's voice rose over the din. "You always were good under pressure, Tanya, but you're not walking away this time." He stepped out from behind cover, weapon drawn, smirk gone. "This isn't about me. It's about tying up loose ends. You saw things that weren't yours to see. That file, those crates, you thought it was just medicine?" Tanya's eyes narrowed. "I remember what was inside. You were selling stolen munitions under humanitarian cover." Avery laughed, low and bitter. "You really think the army didn't know? I had clearance from the top. You were just the fool cleaning up the blood after. Then why fake your death?" Derek shouted from the side. Avery's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because people like us don't get trials. We get buried." Tanya stepped forward, gun steady in her hand. "Then let's finish what they started." Before Avery could react, she fired not at him but at the container hook behind him. The heavy chain snapped, dropping a pile of coiled rope between them, dust exploding upward. Tanya moved through it like a phantom, tackling Avery to the ground. His gun skidded away. He swung at her fast, but she caught his arm and twisted until he screamed. She pinned him down, breath steady. "You wanted me here? You got me," he spat blood, sneering. "You can't kill me. You're still that same rule-following soldier." Tanya pressed the muzzle to his chest. You're right. But I don't need to kill you. Derek approached, phone in hand. Captain Ellis has everything. The pier cameras. The files. Your confession, Avery froze. Tanya stood up, stepping back as Ellis's sirens approached in the distance. You played the wrong game, she said quietly. I don't fight for power. I fight to end it. Avery glared up at her, hatred etched into his face. You think Park's clean in all this? He's worse than me. Tanya looked down at him, expression unreadable. Maybe, but at least he doesn't hide behind flags. As the police stormed the yard, guns drawn, Derek holstered his weapon and nodded toward her. You handled that better than anyone could have. Tanya gave a faint, weary smile. I didn't handle it. I survived it. Ellis approached seconds later, eyes sweeping the scene. You really don't do quiet nights, do you? Guess not, she said. Behind them, Avery was hauled to his feet, cursing. You don't know what you've done, he shouted. This goes higher than me. Ellis turned to Tanya. He's not bluffing. Tanya looked out over the dark water. I know, she said softly. Which means it's not over. The lights of the city reflected off the waves like shards of glass. The storm was passing, but the war behind it had just begun. 2 days after the pier ambush, Seattle was wrapped in gray again, rain on metal rooftops, traffic lights cutting through mist. To most people, it was just another Wednesday. For Tanya Jackson, it was the calm before another storm. Captain Raymond Ellis called her in early. His voice on the phone had carried that gravel tone she recognized from her Army days, the one men used when they'd seen too much and didn't want to explain it twice. At precinct headquarters, Ellis shut the blinds, set a folder on the desk, and locked the door. You remember when Avery said this went higher than him? He began. He wasn't bluffing. Tanya leaned forward. What's in that folder? Ellis opened it. Inside were grainy photocopies stamped, Confidential Department of Defense. 513. Across the top of each page was a project code name, Operation Sentinel Forward. The blood drained from Tanya's face. That's impossible. That was buried years ago. Apparently not buried deep enough, Ellis said. These files came from an anonymous source this morning. They contain troop movement logs, weapons manifests, and payment records. Civilian subcontractors paid off the books. Guess whose name's in there? She exhaled slowly. Mine, Ellis nodded. But not the way you think. It lists you as missing in action. Which is funny considering you were filing tax returns in Georgia that same year. So they erased me, Tanya said quietly. Someone did, Ellis corrected. And Avery wasn't just smuggling guns. He was moving classified material. The crates you saw weren't weapons, they were prototype targeting systems. American-made, sold to private security networks overseas. Tanya rubbed her temples. And now they're back in circulation. Exactly, Ellis said. We've traced one serial code to a warehouse under Jin Park's import company. She froze. You're saying Park's involved? Ellis gave a slow nod. Looks that way. Maybe he didn't start this war, maybe he's cleaning up evidence. Either way, you're in the middle. For a moment, Tanya said nothing. Her reflection in the glass window looked like someone she didn't know anymore, half soldier, half survivor. Finally, she spoke. Where's the warehouse? Ellis frowned. You're not going alone. I'm not asking for permission, she said. He sighed. I should arrest you just for saying that. You won't, she said. Because you know what happens when people like Avery run unchecked. Ellis shook his head, defeated but not surprised. Fine, but you take backup. Derek's waiting outside. The drive to the South Industrial Zone was silent. Derek kept his hands on the wheel, eyes steady on the road. You sure you want to see this through? He asked. Tanya stared out the window. I don't want to see it through. I just want to know how far it goes. They reached the docks again, this time to a warehouse marked Koryo Shipping. TD. The building looked abandoned, rusted gates, busted floodlights, a sign half hanging by a chain. But the cameras along the fence were brand new. Tanya spotted them instantly. That's not abandoned surveillance. Derek nodded. Park runs it under a shell company. Imports electronics, officially. She gave a faint smile. And unofficially? He didn't answer. They entered quietly through a side door Derek unlocked with a card key too easily, Tanya thought. Inside, the smell of oil and concrete hung heavy. Rows of shipping crates lined the floor, each stamped with numbers and a barcode tag. Tanya picked up one tag and scanned it with her phone. The screen flashed red, encrypted access only. She looked at Derek. This is government-grade encryption. He hesitated. Yeah, Park has arrangements. Tanya's voice dropped. Arrangements or blackmail? Before he could answer, movement caught her eye. In the far corner under a flickering bulb stood Jin Park himself. Calm as ever, hands clasped behind his back, his dark suit immaculate. You shouldn't be here, Miss Jackson, he said. But I suppose you were always going to find your way here. Tanya stepped closer. You lied to me. You said you were being targeted because of debts. This, she gestured to the rows of crates, isn't debt. It's treason. Park's tone stayed smooth. Treason is a matter of allegiance. Mine was never to your government. Those weapons killed soldiers, she said, voice tightening. My team included. Park's eyes flickered, not with guilt, but something like respect. And yet here you are, still cleaning up after them. Derek shifted uneasily beside her. Boss, she's not your enemy. Park ignored him. You want the truth, Miss Jackson? Avery worked for me once. When he went rogue, I took his assets, those systems included. The moment I discovered their origin, I hid them. Not to sell, to keep them out of worse hands. Tanya's skepticism was ice cold. And I'm supposed to believe a mob boss turned humanitarian? Park smiled faintly. No. But perhaps you'll believe that the United States isn't the only country that builds things it later regrets. Before she could respond, Ellis's voice crackled through her earpiece. Tanya, get out now. She froze. Why? Because that warehouse isn't Park's anymore. Homeland Security just seized the property 2 hours ago. You're walking into a classified zone. Park's calm evaporated. He turned toward the exit, but the heavy metallic clank of a rolling gate echoed through the building. The doors were sealing. Derek swore under his breath. They locked us in. A distorted voice came through the warehouse PA system. Unauthorized personnel detected. Surrender immediately. Tanya looked at Park. What did you do? I didn't trigger this, he said. Someone else did. She realized it at the same time he did. Avery's voice, recorded, patched into the system before his arrest. Thought you could erase me, didn't you? Let's see how you like being buried under your own secrets. The hum of machinery filled the air. A countdown alarm began flashing red above the door. Derek shouted, They rigged the building. Park turned to Tanya, eyes sharp. You still think this was about me? The lights cut out. The sound of ticking filled the dark, and in that black silence Tanya muttered, No, it was about erasing the evidence. Darkness swallowed the warehouse. The red emergency lights flickered, bathing the steel walls in pulses of crimson. Tanya's instincts kicked in before fear could. Her body moved the way it used to on missions, fast, low, deliberate. Derek, find the power source, she barked. Park with me. We've got less than. A sharp digital beep interrupted her. A small screen near the far wall lit up. 0259. The numbers began to tick down. 3 minutes, Derek said. Whatever Avery set, it's wired to the whole grid. Park's tone was unnervingly calm. He planned to destroy everything: files, weapons, me, you. A perfect ending for all of us. Tanya scanned the walls, spotting the control panels near the back office. We'll see about that. They sprinted past the rows of crates. The hum of electrical current grew louder. A reminder that the power hadn't gone out, it had just shifted to something else. Tanya stopped at a fuse box, ripped it open, and found a maze of wires, some military standard, others amateur. This isn't just a bomb, she said. It's a data purge. Whoever trips it deletes every trace of the operation before it blows. Park stepped closer, watching her work. You know this system? I designed part of it, she muttered. Back when I still trusted who I was designing for. Derek pulled a flashlight from his belt and shined it over the mess of cables. You can disarm it? Tanya exhaled through her nose. Maybe. Ellis's voice suddenly crackled through the earpiece again. Tanya, we've got satellite visual. The building's flagged for containment. Evac now, repeat, get out of there. No time, Tanya replied. If we leave, the explosion takes the docks and half the South Pier with it. Then tell me you've got a plan, Ellis said. The line static filled. Working on it. She traced the wires with trembling fingers, the years of dormant memory firing back to life. Every sound in the warehouse echoed the tick of the timer, the buzz of electricity, the faint tremor of her own pulse. Derek, check those crates near the southwest wall, she ordered. Find me anything with coolant or liquid nitrogen markings. He ran, boots splashing through puddles of rainwater on the floor. Moments later, he shouted, found one industrial compressor unit still sealed. Perfect, Tanya said. That's our failsafe, Park frowned.
You're not planning to freeze the detonator?
That will only delay exactly, she said, cutting him off. Delay buys time, and right now time's worth more than anything. She yanked open another panel and found the detonator block, a small black box wired to a timing circuit. The countdown read 0142. Tanya, Derek warned, you've got less than 2 minutes. She ignored him, pried open the casing with a wrench and started isolating wires red, blue, yellow, white. Her lips moved silently, repeating old training sequences like prayers. Red is current, blue is loop, yellow's dummy, white's heartbeat. Which one kills the trigger? Park asked. Tanya gave him a thin smile. Guess wrong and we don't get to find out. Comforting, Park murmured, her hand steadied. She pulled the yellow first, no change. Then blue, the timer sped up. Stro 54, wrong one, Derek shouted. I see that. Tanya snapped, reattaching it instantly. It's wired through a false loop. Whoever built this wanted someone to panic. She glanced at the coolant cylinder Derek had rolled over. Open it halfway. Slow release, Derek cracked the valve. A rush of freezing vapor spilled out, swirling across the detonator box. The metal began to frost over, slowing the current. The timer flickered 0047, 0040 signed, 043 then steadied. Tanya grinned faintly. It's buying us seconds, Park crouched beside her. Seconds won't be enough, she met his eyes. Then stop watching and help me reroute the power feed. He hesitated, then removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. You're very demanding for someone I owe my life to. And you're very chatty for a man sitting on a bomb, she replied. Together, they stripped wires, Park following her sharp, efficient commands. Derek stood guard at the door, scanning the shadows. The red light strobed slower now, but the timer kept ticking 0.27. Tanya, Ellis's voice thundered through the comm again. We're evacuating the docks. I repeat, you're out of time. Not yet, she said through gritted teeth. She cut the white wire. The timer froze at 0.19, no explosion, no sound, just stillness. Then one last faint beep. Park tensed. Derek shouted, wait! The timer blinked once, then went dark. Silence filled the room like a held breath finally released. Tanya leaned back, exhaling hard. It's done, Derek laughed shakily. You're insane. Not the first time I've heard that, she said. Park straightened, brushing dust from his sleeves. You just saved my life again, Miss Jackson. She shot him a hard look. Don't thank me yet. Someone knew we'd come here. Someone inside your circle. He didn't answer, but his eyes betrayed him. There was someone he didn't trust either. Before they could speak again, a side door creaked open. A beam of flashlight cut through the dim warehouse. Ellis stepped inside with 2 officers, eyes wide. You actually stayed, he said. And you actually did it. Yeah, Tanya replied. Now we figure out who wanted to erase all this. Ellis looked at Park. You planning to cooperate? Park's reply was cold. For now. But understand whatever's buried in these files, it's not finished. And whoever's behind it, they don't erase mistakes. They erase witnesses. Tanya wiped sweat and soot from her face, staring at the dark crates around them. Then we'd better stop being witnesses, she said quietly, and start being ghosts. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, steady, relentless. Somewhere far away, a phone vibrated on a mahogany desk. A man's voice answered. She survived, the caller said. A pause. Then a reply, smooth, calm, and terrifyingly certain. Good. That means she'll lead us straight to the others. The flight to Washington, D.C. landed just before dawn. The sky was the same color as steel cold, silent, merciless. Tanya Jackson stepped off the plane with a borrowed duffel bag and a name that wasn't hers printed on the ticket stub. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, but her mind was sharper than ever. Fear had a way of clearing the fog. By the time most passengers were grabbing coffee in the terminal, Tanya was already walking toward a nondescript sedan parked in long-term parking. Inside sat Captain Raymond Ellis, dressed in plain clothes, eyes shadowed with fatigue. You didn't think I'd let you stroll into the Capitol alone, did you? He said. Tanya climbed in without a word. You said 48 hours. That was 12 ago. Ellis smirked faintly. You forget who taught me how to ignore orders. They drove through the city in silence, passing the marble glow of government buildings that looked too clean to hold secrets. Tanya studied the skyline rows of offices that built wars and sold peace in the same sentence. Finally, Ellis broke the quiet. Stratfield Dynamics. Officially, they make radar arrays and communication satellites. Unofficially, they run shell subsidiaries tied to black budget R&D. Homeland keeps a wing of their building under contract. And they're the ones who funded Operation Sentinel Forward, Tanya said flatly. Ellis nodded. According to Parks Drive, yeah. If that's true, whatever's inside that building could blow open a decade of cover-ups or get you killed before lunch. Tanya stared ahead. Then we better be early. They reached Stratfield's main compound just after sunrise, an austere slab of mirrored glass and concrete, guarded by 2 layers of fencing and armed private security. The company logo gleamed on the gate, SD Precision Through Vision. Ellis parked 2 blocks away. You're not walking through that front door, so how do you plan to get in? Tanya opened the duffel bag and pulled out a folded set of coveralls, a visitor badge, and a small EMP scanner. Maintenance contractor. There's an underground loading dock that handles equipment deliveries. Security's lighter there before 8. Ellis arched a brow. Where'd you get all that? She gave a small grin. From people who still owe me favors. He shook his head. You terrify me sometimes. Good, she said, stepping out. Means I'm doing something right. The loading dock was quiet, the air thick with diesel and echoes. Tanya moved like a shadow, the fluorescent lights overhead humming in long, broken intervals. When she reached the access door, she waved the stolen badge over the scanner. The light blinked green. Inside, the hallway stretched cold and sterile machines humming behind reinforced glass. Every surface reflected her face like a ghost she didn't recognize. Her earpiece crackled. Ellis's voice whispered through. Security feed loops are holding. You've got 7 minutes before they notice. Copy, she murmured. She slipped through a coded door marked Research Division C. Inside were rows of computer terminals, all dark except one, a single monitor glowing in the corner. Tanya approached, inserted Park's flash drive, and watched the screen light up with a network prompt. Access granted, Shadow Directive Server. Her pulse quickened. Ellis, I'm in. Lines of encrypted data poured across the screen, schematics, payment ledgers, test logs. Then came a folder labeled Field Archive, Sentinel Forward Control Subject, TJ. Her stomach dropped. She clicked it open. Photos, dozens of them. Satellite shots, medical reports, bio readings, her own face, her pulse rate during combat, her decision patterns under duress. They hadn't erased her. They'd studied her. She whispered. They were tracking me even after discharge. Ellis's voice came through, tight with disbelief. What does it say? It says I was the prototype, she said softly. They didn't build machines to control soldiers. They built data models based on soldiers who survived what others didn't. My instincts, my reactions, they turned it into predictive software. The next generation of combat AI. That's, Ellis hesitated. That's human behavior weaponized. Before Tanya could reply, a sharp beep echoed from the terminal. The words flashed in red. Remote intrusion detected, trace initiated. They found me, she hissed. Pull the drive and get out, Ellis barked. But the screen changed before she could move. A new window appeared, live video feed. A man in a gray suit, face half shadowed, looked directly into the camera. Sergeant Jackson, he said calmly. You're trespassing. Tanya froze. Who are you? You can call me Director Kellen, he replied. And before you destroy that data, you should know your name isn't on the kill list. It's on the recruitment roster. Her heart pounded. You think I'd ever work for you? He smiled faintly. You already have. Everything you've done since Kandahar has been calculated. The ambush, the restaurant, even the warehouse. You think you were uncovering the truth? We were observing your response. Real-time behavioral testing. Liar, Tanya said. Check the timestamps, he replied. Every location you visited was already under Stratfield's watch. Even your rescuer Jin Park was funded by our offshore accounts. You've been moving through a maze we built for you. Ellis's voice thundered in her earpiece. Tanya, don't listen to him. But Kellen's voice cut through. Captain Ellis, you've served your usefulness as well. Step outside and count the black vans surrounding your car if you don't believe me. Ellis cursed. They've got teams here already. Tanya ripped the flash drive from the terminal. Alarms erupted instantly. Red lights flared across the corridor. She sprinted for the exit, every motion pure instinct. 2 guards rounded the corner, shouting orders. Tanya ducked under one's arm, slammed her elbow into the other's jaw, and kept moving. Glass shattered behind her. Bullets ricocheted off the walls. Ellis! She yelled into the mic. Get out now. Too late, his voice rasped. They've boxed me in. Stay put. I'm coming. Tanya, listen, if you don't make it out, someone has to expose what's on that drive. You're the story now. The line went dead. She burst through the loading dock door into the cold morning air. Security trucks screeched around the corner. She sprinted toward the chain-link fence, vaulted it, and rolled into the drainage ditch beyond. The flash drive pressed against her palm like a heartbeat. Behind her, the Stratfield building stood silent and gleaming, its glass walls reflecting the rising sun like nothing had happened. But inside those walls, alarms kept ringing, and Director Kellen watched the escape footage with clinical satisfaction. She's reacting exactly as predicted, he said to his aide. Proceed with stage 2. The aide hesitated. And if she exposes us? Kellen smiled thinly. Then she'll lead us to the rest of her kind. Tanya limped toward the city highway soaking wet, adrenaline burning through fatigue. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Ellis was gone, Park was compromised, and the government had turned her life into an experiment. But she still had the flash drive. And as long as it existed, the truth wasn't dead. The sky above D.C. was streaked with pale morning light when Tanya Jackson reached the safe house. It was a decaying brick townhouse on the edge of Anacostia Quiet, anonymous, forgotten. Inside, Captain Raymond Ellis sat at a folding table with a bandage on his shoulder, a laptop open and 3 empty coffee cups beside him. You made it, he said, voice gravelly but alive. Tanya shut the door behind her. You're supposed to be dead. Almost was, he muttered. Homeland's got Stratfield sealed. They're scrubbing everything, emails, contracts, even payroll logs, like the company never existed. Tanya pulled the flash drive from her jacket and placed it on the table. Not everything, Ellis stared at it. You realize what's on that thing could crash entire agencies? That's the idea, he rubbed his temples. You can't just dump classified data online. They'll brand you a traitor. Tanya's voice hardened. They already branded me an experiment, so maybe it's time to even the score. Before Ellis could argue, a third voice came from the shadows near the back wall. She's right, they both turned. Jin Park stepped out from the darkness, calm as ever, though his tailored suit had been replaced with a black jacket and combat boots. Ellis's hand went to his holster. You're a long way from Seattle, Park. I go where the truth hides, Park replied smoothly. And right now it's in that drive. I can help you get it to the world before they erase it again. Tanya narrowed her eyes. Why should I trust you? Because the people who built Sentinel Forward are the same ones who funded my operation. They betrayed me long before they came for you. Ellis folded his arms. So what's your plan? March into the Pentagon with a thumb drive? Park shook his head. Too obvious, too slow. We use the same network Stratfield used to distribute propaganda. The satellite uplink at the National News Exchange. You upload there and every major station picks up the signal before they can pull it. Ellis frowned. That's federal infrastructure. Park smiled faintly. So was Sentinel Forward. Tanya looked between them. We get one shot. Once the broadcast goes live, they'll trace the source within minutes. Then we make those minutes count, Park said. By midnight, they were in motion. Park drove, Ellis monitored police chatter, and Tanya stared out the window, rehearsing the upload steps in her head. Every move had to be perfect. They reached the broadcast complex near the Potomac, a towering glass structure pulsing with antenna lights. Security was tight, but Park had come prepared. He produced 2 stolen ID cards and a code key. Temporary clearance, he said. Don't ask how. Inside, the building was eerily quiet. The night shift staff were minimal: 2 guards at the front, a technician in the control room, and a cleaning crew that had already left. Ellis checked his watch. We've got 12 minutes before the next patrol sweep. Tanya nodded. Then let's move. They slipped into the sub-level access corridor. Park typed commands into a terminal, overriding the internal firewall. The security feed flickered, freezing every camera. Welcome to the dark, Park said. Ellis whistled low. You really were in deep. Deeper than I wanted to be, Park replied. They reached the data hub, a glass-walled room filled with humming servers and the low buzz of electricity. Tanya sat at the console and inserted the flash drive. The screen came alive with the Stratfield logo, upload authorization level Omega. She bypassed it with a backdoor code. Her fingers moved fast, typing with surgical precision. Line after line of encrypted data appeared, followed by video clips, documents, photographs, everything Stratfield had buried. Ellis leaned closer. You're live routing through 6 mirror servers. They'll trace you in 90 seconds. I only need 60, she said. The broadcast system activated with a low hum. Across the wall of monitors, news feeds flickered political debates, market reports, weather forecasts. Then one by one they went black. A single image replaced them all. Tanya's face. Her voice came steady through the speakers. My name is Tanya Jackson. I was a medic in the United States Army. In 2013, my unit was destroyed in an ambush called Operation Sentinel Forward. We were told it was enemy fire. It wasn't. It was a weapons test run by Stratfield Dynamics under a government contract. They used live soldiers to calibrate automated targeting systems. I was the control subject. Across America, televisions glitched. Phones vibrated with emergency notifications. Social media feeds erupted with the sudden broadcast. I'm not the only one, Tanya continued. There are others, men and women declared missing or insane, all erased from the record. Their data built the foundation for the weapons now being sold overseas under humanitarian cover. If you're seeing this, the files are already mirrored to every major network. They can't bury this again. Alarms blared through the building. Park looked up. They're here. Ellis pulled his weapon. How long until it finishes? 30 seconds, Tanya said, eyes never leaving the screen. Through the glass wall, security teams, advanced black uniforms, silenced rifles, laser sights cutting through the dark. Keep them out, Tanya ordered. Ellis took cover near the door, firing short bursts to slow them down. Park activated the lockdown sequence, sealing the corridor. The upload bar reached 92%. Then the power cut. The screens went black. The hum of the servers died. No, Tanya slammed her fist on the console. Park grabbed a portable drive from his jacket. I mirrored the data. Backup safe. Where? Ellis shouted. Park hesitated. Somewhere they can't reach. Tanya turned on him. You planned this? Before he could answer, the emergency lights snapped on and the glass door slid open. A tall figure stepped inside, unarmed but confident. Director Kellen. Impressive, he said, his voice smooth as steel. But you can't fight a system by shouting into it. Tanya raised her pistol. Watch me, he smiled. If you shoot me, the story dies with me. But if you come with me, maybe you'll finally understand why we built it in the first place. Ellis growled. You built a weapon out of people. Kellen's eyes flicked toward Tanya. No, we built survival out of chaos. She's proof it works. Don't listen, Ellis snapped. He's stalling, but Kellen just stared at her. You can't undo what you are, Sergeant. The only question left is which side of history you stand on. The upload bar flickered back to life 100%. Tanya's broadcast replayed behind him, unstoppable now. The world had already seen. Kellen's smile faltered. What have you done? Tanya lowered her gun. I stopped being your experiment. Outside, the building flooded with sirens and flashing lights. Federal vehicles surrounded the block. Park looked at her, then at the screens lighting up across the city. You just changed the world. Tanya stared out the glass, her reflection overlapping the skyline. No, she said quietly. I just made it tell the truth. Hours later, headlines spread across every outlet. Sentinel Forward exposed. Weapons tested on American troops. Government denies involvement. Tanya disappeared before dawn. Ellis went into protective custody. Jin Park vanished again, leaving behind an envelope with coordinates and one sentence. It's not over. Somewhere deep underground, a new server came online. On its screen, a single file blinked open. Subject TJ active. And in a hidden command center, Director Kellen whispered to his staff, Phase 2 begins.